And before this video begins, I'd just like to give a special thank you to my Asban Team level patron, Fallon Cortez. Thank you for supporting the channel. The year is 2017. Nintendo switches things up. The UK triggers Article 50 and Disney decides to play Monopoly. It was a scary year, continuing the social, political and cultural decline we still find ourselves struggling with in. Although, thank God, Skibidi Toilet didn't exist yet. But in the midst of this chaotic and intimidating year, it was time for a big change in Doctor Who, with Series 10 bidding farewell to longtime showrunner Stephen Moffat and 12th Doctor Peter Capaldi. It's a series designed as both a fresh new launchpad, but also as a victory lap, wrapping up 7 years of the show under Moffat's careful care and guidance. From the frozen River Thames in the 1800s to a distant colony ship trapped by a black hole, Series 10 covers a lot of ground both physically and narratively. We also get a brand new companion in the form of Bill Potts, the return of Nardole, and to top it all off, the unlikely redemption arc of Missy. It's a very busy series trying to do a lot, but is it good? Does it succeed at sending a whole era of Who out with a bang? Well, as always, that's what I'm here to find out. So join me for the penultimate time to take a deep dive into Doctor Who Series 10. Doctor Who was in a bit of a weird spot in 2017. Viewership and public interest in the show had been on a steady decline since Series 7 in 2012 and 2013, and Moffat had even planned to leave his role as showrunner as early as 2015's Series 9. Although, obviously, plans changed. Obviously, I love Series 9, it's fantastic and high concept, with a brilliant look and sense of production quality. However, it is definitely a divisive series, especially with the prominence of Clara, who half the Doctor Who fanbase hates with a concerning level of dedication and rage. Anyway, 2016 was designed as a gap year to allow incoming showrunner Chris Chibnall to start his run the following year. But again, plans changed. Therefore, Moffat's swan song would instead be Series 10, and he decided to take a very different approach to Series 9. Instead of the heavily interlinked multi-part episode format of Series 9, Series 10 would aim to strike the perfect balance between those overarching storylines and the more standalone episodes. But most importantly, Series 10 is like a reset for the whole show, stripping everything back and starting again with a brand new, grounded companion Bill.
Can I use the toilet?
Along with reintroducing classic Who villains like the Ice Warriors, Cybermen and the Master. However, it doesn't quite commit either way, which is my first major issue with the series, and it's not the last. I think a big issue with Series 10 is how it tries to balance its continuity and its innovation, because it tries to be the best of both worlds and fails at being either. So much of the marketing and hype around Series 10 was it being a fresh start, a jumping on point for new viewers with absolutely no familiarity with the show beforehand. But unfortunately, it just doesn't work like that. Rose and the 11th Hour worked because they were completely fresh slates, with new showrunners alongside new doctors and new companions, so everything had to be reintroduced. But because Moffat tried to reset the show within his own era, it doesn't work as well as those. Sure, the Doctor is successfully re-established, this university professor who is secretly an alien with a time and space travelling police box, but the series quickly begins to buckle under the weight of its history and existing narrative arcs. Missy's character development is great, but most of it relies on her already being a familiar figure to viewers. And the return of the Saxon Master makes absolutely no sense to new viewers, especially because regeneration hadn't really been explained in the series before that point. Even Nardole's presence is a bit confusing, since the flashback in Extremis changes him from just a normal sidekick to someone with a lot more continuity baggage new viewers are completely unaware of. So it just makes him harder to quantify. Honestly, despite the pilot being a phenomenal jumping on point, I really can't see anyone being able to truly appreciate and understand the show if Series 10 is their first. It's just too conclusive and has way too much baggage weighing it down, so it just doesn't work as the fresh start it desperately wants to be. But regardless of how well Series 10 balances the new and the old, it's undeniable that it is indeed a new start, thanks to the character of Bill Potts, played by Pearl Mackie. Bill is essentially the polar opposite of previous companion Clara Oswald. Rather than a Doctor-like puzzle box, Bill is very much the typical Doctor Who companion. A young and curious go-getter with a relatable backstory and a grounded sense of humanity, intelligence, and modern sarcastic humour. Much like most of the modern companions, Bill is an audience surrogate, essentially a stand-in for new viewers and allowing them to experience this new world through her eyes. It's very similar to how Rose was characterised in Series 1, a way to drip feed information and elements of the show without it feeling unnatural. And I do think this works well with Bill, since she allows the newcomers to become familiar with the Doctor, the TARDIS, the monsters, etc., without any of it feeling forced or weird because she's brand new to it all too. However, I've never really felt convinced or attached to Bill as an actual personality, compared to a purely functional narrative tool. Sure, she's smart, curious, and has some funny moments throughout, but I've always just kind of felt like she's a bit bland. Maybe that's because she's the only Moffat-era companion to just have one series, but I definitely consider it a very non-controversial opinion to call Bill the most forgettable companion of Series 1 to 10. Like, she's decent, but she just doesn't hit the same as the others. Don't get me wrong. Bill has some good episodes, where her curiosity and moral compass drive the narrative, like in Smile or Thin Ice for example, and she plays a major role in the Monk trilogy. But a lot of episodes just don't really make her feel important enough or use her in a convincing way. She fades into the background of Empress of Mars and Eaters of Light, and she hardly does anything in Extremis or Oxygen. Even her big, crucial role in Lie of the Land feels a little bit hollow. On paper, Bill has a great character journey, coming from a background of loss and unfulfillment, finding a best friend and mentor in the Doctor before being tragically transformed into a Cyberman and losing everything. It's a decent story arc, but you don't really get the sense that too much is actually changing about her, along with her personal life being incredibly negligible. Her foster mother Moira appears twice near the start, but then vanishes. Her circle of friends only appear in Knock Knock and then never get mentioned ever again. She really falls into the typical Moffat-era problem of having no real sense of a grounded, realistic home life, just like Clara and Amy before her. I know a lot of people like to make noise about Bill's sexuality, considering it to be mentioned too often, but it actually isn't really. She only ever mentions it when she actually needs to, except in the finale. That's the one time it makes no sense. Honestly, the worst thing Bill does all series is barely doing anything. She just doesn't have many defining moments like so many other modern companions, and she really feels overshadowed by them, so she just ends up a pretty underwhelming and bland character on the whole. However, the same absolutely cannot be said for old Nardi, who makes his return after being introduced in the two previous Christmas specials. Nardole is fantastic comic relief throughout the series, a departure from the standard companion archetype as he's not a wide-eyed traveller or someone who yearns for adventure. Instead, he's more like a caretaker, a nanny of sorts for the Doctor to keep him secure on Earth and loyal to his oath to stay. It really sets him apart from the traditional dynamic and makes him a refreshing balance, because of how he grounds the Doctor's behaviour. The pair have great comedic chemistry, a very unlikely friendship that we, and the Doctor, don't appreciate until they part ways in the finale. I appreciate how Nardole is purely Earth-based in the first half of the series, with the Doctor and Bill sneaking out to go on their adventures. But once Missy is revealed as being inside the vault, he's no longer needed as this guardian, so he's able to become more involved with the adventures, and it really helps balance some episodes like Extremis and Oxygen, where the trio can shine more as a group and play to each other's strengths, with Nardole as this kind of middle ground in terms of abilities and knowledge. Nardole also does a good job of being a sort of moral guide for the Doctor, a bridge between him and Bill. His connection with Riversong allows him to speak to the Doctor on a deeper level and get through to him when the Doctor doesn't want to listen. Speaking of the Doctor, this series marks the third and final one with the best Doctor of them all, Peter Capaldi. The 12th Doctor is absolutely my favourite incarnation of them all, and Series 10 shows the culmination of his character development as he becomes this much more compassionate and caring figure, compared to the colder, purely calculating person he was at the very beginning of his time. In those first two series, he was often distant, gruff, and a bit abrasive. In this one, he's evolved into a much warmer figure who is more patient and emotionally engaged than he ever was before. Capaldi also continues to strike the perfect witty balance between dry sarcasm and genuine playfulness. He's a true joy to watch in his element. Having fully acclimated to the character by this point, the 12th Doctor's newfound comfort is clearly reflected within even his clothing choices, choosing hoodies and jumpers rather than a full suit and waistcoat like his previous two series. It really helps to make him more of a gentle, approachable figure, making his mentor relationship with Bill work so much better, because he's looser and able to enjoy himself a bit more. However, he still maintains that nature as a figure of authority, even in the most chaotic situations like Oxygen, commanding respect and taking control even without his eyesight, showing the true power he wields as a leader and a real hero. And this idea of heroism once again comes to the forefront in this series, much like it did in the previous two. Series 8 was all about the Doctor discovering himself and exploring his identity, how he doesn't feel like a hero. Series 9 stepped back from that slightly because he had completed that journey, but it very much comes back up in Series 10, with him now secure and confident in his nature as an unconventional hero. The 12th Doctor has some fantastic from-the-heart speeches in the series, like his monologues in Thin Ice, Oxygen and Pyramid at the End of the World, along with his absolutely phenomenal speech in The Doctor Falls. Speeches like these really help to cement his sense of morality and justice, further establishing this Doctor as outspoken and a paragon of doing the right thing. Capaldi brings a gravitas and intensity to the character that few actors could ever match, with the 12th Doctor carrying a millennia of wisdom, pain, and most importantly, hope. It's a fitting final series for this incarnation, stripping back all the layers of the Doctor and summarising his life and mission with one simple mantra: without hope, without witness, without reward. It's the definitive summary of the Doctor in the modern era. How he never does what he does to be a hero, he just does it because it's the right thing to do. It's being kind and it's trying to help others with no chance of success or acclaim. And that's what makes the Doctor so special, because he's a hero without wanting to be. He's just a good, moral person who does his best. It's a really powerful theme in the series, seeing the Doctor repeatedly live by this mantra, like in Extremis, where the Shadow Doctor rebels against the simulation at the cost of his own life. And then obviously there's the finale, where he sacrifices himself just to save a few children for a few years. It's a beautiful series to send off the 12th Doctor, really capturing the spirit of the character and giving him a nice journey. Another great character journey comes as Missy, the Doctor's ancient best friend and eternal enemy, has an unprecedented redemption arc throughout Series 10. When Missy was introduced in Series 8, she was incredibly sadistic and insane, one of the most ruthless incarnations of the Rogue Time Lord. However, in this series, we're reintroduced to a Missy who was saved by the Doctor at her execution, sealed inside a vault to begin 1,000 years of penance. It's a really bold step to take, showing the Doctor's persistent wishes to mend their friendship, and, more boldly, Missy's willingness to actually try and engage with the process. Starting in Lie of the Land, we start to see the black-hearted psychopathic character begin to actually show a sense of regret and guilt for the many people she's killed. In the subsequent episodes, we see her struggling more and more to grapple with these newfound emotions, since she's blocked it all off for so long and she's never had to think about the damage she's done. Michelle Gomez is the perfect choice for an arc like this, her nuanced performance blending all the menace you'd expect, but also a newer sense of humour and vulnerability as she becomes more of a reluctant ally than a villain. It crescendos perfectly in the finale, where she's a proper part of the team, this test devised by the Doctor to see if she truly means what she claims and to see if she can actually be good. Like I said, it's a very bold and creative direction to take the Master in, because we've never seen them placed in such a position, and the series showcases just how strange it is for such a well-known villain to earnestly attempt to be good. However, the best part about Missy's attempt at redemption is the return of her previous incarnation from the first Russell T Davies era of the show. Unlike Missy, the Saxon Master is incredibly evil and outright irredeemable. He's an insane, maniacal monster who only craves death and destruction, even viewing his own death as a way to beat the Doctor. His return in the finale, albeit spoiled by trailers, is a fantastic way to underscore the compelling dynamic between Missy and the Doctor. He's such a dark and cynical portrayal that it really reminds you just how far Missy has actually come as a person. And it's this same return that's the only thing capable of stopping her attempts at becoming a good person, because it's the absolute worst incarnation for it. The presence of the Saxon Master almost immediately reverts Missy into a more villainous and cold-hearted person, like dangling a drug in front of someone in rehab and taunting them about how much better it is than being sober. It's great to see this real test of loyalty, one the Doctor has no control over, and one we can clearly see Missy struggling with throughout the finale. It culminates perfectly in that offer to stand with the Doctor, finally the chance to put things right between them at the end, and one that she turns down, only to then realise he's right. The inherent tragedy within the storyline is that the Doctor never finds out that Missy changed her mind and tried to help him after all. We get that amazing ending in the forest, as the Master and Missy betray one another, showing how the character's path has always been heading towards this self-destruction. Who better to kill the Master than themselves? It's such a great way to end the Master's story, with its redemption arc throughout the series and giving the character a conclusive ending. I genuinely feel like the character should have been permanently rested after this, or at least make future appearances earlier unseen incarnations before this character shift. It's the most fitting poetic end for the Master, and it's the perfect way to pay off the Vault redemption arc, focusing on her very identity and the deeper ramification. Yes, let's now talk about the themes of the series. Series 10 is Moffat's last full series, and it concludes his era with a thematic exploration of concepts like identity, morality, and change, a fitting reflection showcasing growth and evolution. It's very present within Missy's story, as I've already mentioned, but these themes also manifest with all the characters as they go through small transformations and develop as people over the course of the series. The Doctor loses his eyesight and is forced to deal with the new difficulties of that, and Bill has a very traditional companion journey of becoming more comfortable and confident, culminating with her promise to be the one to show Heather around rather than the other way. The series also deals with the recurring question of what it means to be human, which we see in Extremis with the simulated people and the finale with the Cybermen. Hell, even Knock Knock touches upon it with Eliza. It's really smartly incorporated into the series, a solid spine running throughout and tying a lot of episodes together. It's the same with the themes about capitalism, industrialization, and colonialism, which are apparent in a lot of episodes. One of the most outright politically charged series of the entire show. And I'm sure people reacted to that very normally. Lastly, the other core theme I noticed within Series 10, particularly the Monk trilogy, is the idea of philosophy and concepts like free will, asking a lot of existential questions about the nature of our lives and what, if any, freedom we actually have as a species. I appreciate how strong and clear the themes of the series are. Almost every episode has an obvious main theme, and there's clear storytelling from start to end. It's something I honestly miss about the show. I haven't felt this level of cohesion since Series 10. I'm not nearly as keen on Series 10 as I am on Series 8 and 9. It's definitely a step down in quality, especially with the incredibly weak episodes Thin Ice, Knock Knock, Lie of the Land, Empress of Mars, and Eaters of Light really bringing down the overall quality with undeveloped characters, stunted pacing, and a lack of narrative and emotional depth. They're definitely the weak point of the series. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have some absolute powerhouses and modern classics, like Oxygen, Extremis, and the finale. Oxygen has that fantastic use of space itself as a monster, along with its inventive use of zombies and the spacesuits puppeting these dead bodies, all tied together with that satirical criticism of capitalism and human nature. Extremis is an incredible, thematically rich, high-concept narrative exploring simulation theory, ancient religious mysteries, and existential dread, introducing terrifying, mysterious villains. And lastly, there's the finale, which is a masterful two-parter blending real emotional stakes with classic Doctor Who horror, using the Cybermen for deeply chilling body horror and a black hole causing time dilation that works so well for the narrative. When Series 10 is good, it's incredibly good. It even starts on a really fantastic note, with the pilot being one of the best entry points into Doctor Who as a show and a concept. And despite its faults, I even really appreciate the Monk trilogy in the middle of the series. an interconnected run of 3 episodes that isn't a 3-parter, but still links together in a more experimental way. I really like the high concept ideas of each part, the moral dilemmas they present, and the idea of this global existential threat as the jaws close in around humanity. Of course, on the whole, the trilogy is pretty weak, with severe tonal inconsistency, diminishing returns, and a really disappointing payoff for the monks as antagonists. It's a great attempt at an experimental multi-parter, but it just doesn't get it right, and unfortunately Lie of the Land is one of the worst episodes in the series as a result, even if it looks great and promises a fascinating world. Yes, Series 10 continues proving that the Capaldi era is the cinematic peak of modern Doctor Who, with another gorgeous series that looks truly incredible. The pilot opens the series with some fantastic looking visuals that immediately set the tone for the rest of the episodes. Every single episode has at least one great looking scene. Even the bad ones still have their moments, like the Frost Fair, the Martian caverns, or the ancient Scottish forest at night. The stellar writing of Oxygen and Extremis is further strengthened by their cinematic directing and their use of visual effects. World Enough in Time is a particularly stunning episode. Rachel Talalay returns to once again excel with a Doctor Who finale. We get the eerie, claustrophobic first part, the incredible visuals of the Cybermen, and the naturalistic expanse for the second part. Talalay's work on Doctor Who has always been notable for its tension, atmosphere, and emotional resonance, and the finale is no different. Series 10 really is just another beautiful series to look at, with real consistent quality making everything seriously pop and shine. And in terms of the music, Murray Gold once again creates an engaging and immersive soundscape with his score. It might not be as top level as his earlier series, but it still remains incredibly evocative and enhances a lot of the emotional weight of scenes throughout, especially during that finale. From the bottom to the top of the production and creative departments, Series 10 just really shows that continued success and maturity. How the Moffat era has evolved so much and reached this impressive pinnacle, so it can go out looking its best. Now, if only we could actually get that official soundtrack released. However, I still can't shake the feeling of Series 10 being a pretty mixed bag all around. On one hand, the balance of episodic and serialized storytelling works really well, allowing for a lot of variety whilst the overarching themes and narrative ties the series together. But there's such a big quality divide, because when it's bad, it's really bad. I genuinely think Eaters of Light is one of the most boring episodes of the entire Moffat era, and Empress of Mars does absolutely nothing with its excellent creative premise. So many episodes just don't seem to utilise their premises and feel massively undercooked compared to the ones that hit a home run and get everything right. It's a much more egregious quality divide than I found in Series 8 or Series 9, unfortunately. So it definitely affects the overall quality of this one. I do think the series succeeds with its character-driven drama though, due to all the interpersonal dynamics, and the brilliant performances by the cast really elevate the material, with so many great emotionally charged moments. But even with that said, there are a lot of forgettable side characters throughout, and some of the villains are very underdeveloped in the series. The first half of Series 10 is full of misunderstood monsters that don't mean to be villains, or instances where humans are the real monsters after all.
That was pretty convincing racism for an extraterrestrial.
It all feels a little bit one note and disappointing. The absolute weakest monsters though are the sinister monks, who are introduced in a brilliant, fantastic way with a lot of terror and power, able to do anything and completely change Earth's history. But in Lie of the Land, they're a bit of an afterthought with barely any power or presence, and it really makes them weak looking back. They just don't deliver on the premise, and their lack of depth really undermines the stakes of the trilogy. It's just disappointing. There's something pretty bittersweet about Doctor Who Series 10, the end of Doctor Who as we knew it. We had been comfortably nestled within the safe familiarity of this production team, this visual style, these narrative conventions and enemy types for 12 years, longer than most other shows even run for as a whole. So it's very hard to revisit it and see how it anticipates its own change, ending this Moffat era on such a reflective and bittersweet note before the handover to Chris Chibnall's different, controversial controversial vision which wasn't for me. It's a series that tries to close out Moffat's tenure with grandeur and introspection, focusing on a lot of character-driven stories and philosophical themes, like Moffat's enduring belief that change is inevitable and something to be welcomed, whilst still remembering the importance of what came before. There are a lot of callbacks in the series, from Susan and River right at the beginning, to the use of classic Who writer Rona Munro and the appearances of villains like the Ice Warriors, Mondashian Cybermen, and the Saxon Master. It's full of nods to the past, showing such respect for everything that came before. It doesn't just feel like the end of the Moffat era, it feels like the logical end for Doctor Who as a whole, distilling the heart and soul of the entire show into this one single series. The 12th Doctor has this extended farewell arc, emphasising the importance of courage, kindness and hope against all odds, just because it's the right thing to do. Capaldi's take on the character is the best of them all in my opinion, one of the most complex incarnations with his essence as both a hero and as a flawed person. He's at his most introspective and emotionally open here, his relationship with Bill and Nardole really revealing his capacity for warmth and mentorship, showing his character growth and evolution. The episodes of Series 10 might be mixed and it might not really work too well as the start of an era, but it's perfect as the end of one. Moffat bringing his distinctive storytelling to a poignant conclusion with those themes of identity, choice and heroism, all aspects that defined his era, and he finally answers the question of who the Doctor is. And that's just a kind hero, doing what he does because it's right. Someone anybody is capable of being if your heart is in the right place. All in all, I would give Series 10 a respectable B ranking on the tier list. It's incredibly cohesive, beautiful and has some truly stellar episodes, but the weak companion, episodes and monsters definitely drag it down. It's still a fantastic journey though, this last hurrah for an era that changed and redefined what Doctor Who could be, and all who were involved should be very proud. It isn't the end of Doctor Who, but I would be lying if I said it didn't sometimes feel like it. It has been 7 years since this series, and in those 7 years, I've never felt the same kind of passion and spark for any new episode as I felt back then. It pains me to say it, but after 4 years together, here's where our journey ends. Almost. We still have one last goodbye, and I hope to see you there. So thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. The last one. Bye bye. And I'd just like to give a special thank you to my Asbantium level patron Fallon Cortez, my Platinum level patron Matthew Burns, and my Gold level patrons Chris Douglas and Daniel Shillito. Thank you so much for your support.